This straight away from Chris on YouTube, Lars. After a mighty victory for Besiktas against league leaders Galatasaray, is it too early to say that the Solskjaer project could end with them challenging for a league title again?
Hang on. Right, I want to hear Lars talk about Solskjaer's glorious title win and sailing down the Bosphorus with the Turkish Super League trophy as much as everyone else. But we have to bear in mind that not only have Fenerbahce and Galatasaray set incredible standards over the last couple of seasons, they played the most extraordinary Turkish Cup match, which ended in Jose Mourinho tweaking the face of Okan Buruk, his opposing number, and then being South Parked on social media by Galatasaray. We can't skip that, right?
No, I'm not advocating we skip it, but just, a moment of respect for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his Turkish wheel. Because we'll get to the nose pincher in a minute. But I just want to note that it was a very big win for Besiktas. Obviously, beating Galatasaray is huge, but it was also kind of important for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because he just lost 2 on the bounce in the Super League. One being a particularly bad 1-0 defeat to Konyaspor, in which the opponent went down to 9 men for they were down to 9 for almost half an hour, and Besiktas couldn't score. And that's as much as there's been a positivity around Solskjaer because he got a good start and he's a lovely man and all that. You can't be doing that. So turning around and beating Galatasaray was huge. And I just also want to say, for listeners who remember the video we did for the YouTube channel from Turkey earlier, me and Andy, we talked a little bit about the teams and everything. The first goal Besiktas scored against Galatasaray is the most obvious goal that could possibly happen in this game, because the star is the very speedy Rafa Silva running away from Davinson Sanchez, who falls over, which is like, that's exactly what you're expecting to see happen in this game. And Galatasaray got a little harsh sending off that helped Besiktas a little bit, but good win for Solskjaer and the boys. Back to you, Andy. Let's hear about the nose tweaker. This man who is in no way a circus act at this point of his career.
He's definitely not. But before we get to him, I do feel we should finish off on Solskjaer, actually, because that win over Galatasaray, I think it's easy to take it as evidence that, they could grow into a title contender. There's no doubt. You look at some of the players that Besiktas have gone and bought pre-Solskjaer, and that they should be able to build something from there. But this win over Galatasaray, remember they're the first side to beat Galatasaray in the league this season, so it's an absolutely huge result and kind of breathes a bit of life into the title race as well. It's the most Ole Gunnar Solskjaer performance and win that I've ever seen. And when we were out there in Istanbul, they did a similar thing in that game against Athletic, and Athletic Bilbao are a better team than Besiktas. They have better players than Besiktas. But Solskjaer, if he proved one thing at Manchester United, he's very good at frustrating good opposition, better opposition, and then hitting them on the counter. And as you said, Lars, with Rafa Silva, he's got a playmaker with pace who can score goals, who is like the perfect conduit for that, really.
Yeah, he is, and it's but that is the good and the bad of Solskjaer, I guess. I think United fans will say Solskjaer's Besiktas is the first team in 57 years or something to beat Galatasaray, and they did it by setting the team up very cleverly and getting them on the break. But then the week before, they failed to break down 9-man Konyaspor, and United fans will go, "Yep, that seems about right." Like that's kind of where we are with this guy as a coach. And I guess if to take the question seriously, can they actually be a title challenger? I think the big test for Solskjaer is to show that he can set up a team to be a good passing team, to consistently open up defenses who sit deep, because even in Turkey, not famed for its solid defensive football, you will come up against opponents who sit in a low block and make it awkward for you. And the key to keeping up with Galatasaray and Fenerbahce is that you cannot drop points in those games ever. And that's kind of the thing that I don't know if Solskjaer will be able to do. But I have to hold my hands up and say this has gone better so far than I thought it was going to. So it's a fun one to keep an eye on.
Who knew?
Who knew? I think that is the problem, really. The incredible standards that Galatasaray and Fenerbahce have set in terms of taking points last season. I mean, it's worth reiterating again. Fenerbahce got 99 points last season and didn't win the league. Galatasaray got 102. It was amazing. So I mean, it's going to be close this season, and it's going to be closer because, of course, Besiktas won that game and did Fenerbahce a bit of a favour, which makes it all the more remarkable, really, that in this Turkish Cup game, which, of course, doesn't affect the title race in material terms, it could in terms of confidence and momentum and outlook, because Galatasaray went there, and I think this puts Mourinho like losing his mind again into some sort of perspective. That they went there, Galatasaray, and they won at the Sukru Saracoğlu for the second time this season, once in the Cup, once in the League. Bear in mind that in recent memory they went 20 years without winning on that ground, and now they've gone to Kadıköy and won twice in a season, which is absolutely historic, and they deserve to. They were loads better than Fenerbahce. Now, look, they still points-wise have a chance, especially with the gap having been squeezed a little bit, Fenerbahce, of going on and winning the league. They invested heavily in January as well, which should help them. But the fact is that not only are Galatasaray a better team than Fenerbahce, but the three games that they've played domestically, the intercontinental derbies, have actually suggested that Okan Buruk at this point is a better manager than Jose Mourinho, is a better tactician than Jose Mourinho. That sounds mad to say, but today, here and now, I think it might be true. And so we can talk about the big names, we can talk about Solskjaer, we can talk about Mourinho. Okan Buruk, of course, has got no international name really, despite having played for Inter for a year, and he's a very, very capable player, as we know. And we know from the way he went down when Mourinho gave him that little tweet, yeah, that guy definitely used to be a football player. But I think you look at those games, and Fenerbahce have two games at home in the League and the Cup against Galatasaray. They completely choke both of those times. Galatasaray play way better than them. And in the game at Rams Park, Galatasaray's place, where you know at that point there's a 6-point gap and Fenerbahce, to all intents and purposes, have to go there and try and win. They don't really feel as if they've got a plan to be able to do that. You know, they're never aggressive enough. They make it difficult for Galatasaray, but they've never really got them on the back foot to any extent. So tactically, Mourinho has failed massively in those three derbies. And of course, you could argue that the latest thing is just another excuse to overshadow all that.
Let's turn our attention to the German Cup for Derek on Blue Sky's question. Is third-tier Arminia Bielefeld knocking Bayer Leverkusen out of the DFB Pokal and reaching the final in the process one of the greatest upsets in German football history? And how does it affect Xabi Alonso and Bayer Leverkusen? First off, is it one of the biggest upsets in German football history?
It's one of the biggest, you have to say. But I would want for the biggest. I would go to last year of Saarbrücken, who actually knocked out Bayern Munich. But the thing I would say about Bielefeld is that it's not just Leverkusen. They've also beat Freiburg, Union Berlin, and Werder Bremen. So they're on this run, which is like pretty crazy. I think for a team. For a team that's in the third tier. But Saarbrücken last season beat Bayern Munich. And it was a pretty good Bayern Munich. Like, it was early in the season, but Bayern Munich had in the starting lineup Thomas Müller, Leroy Sané, Joshua Kimmich, Kim in the Ligt in defense. Alphonso Davies started. Neuer was in goal, and Saarbrücken, in spite of going down 1 goal early on to Müller, came back and won it 2-1. I think that's an even bigger thing. But the thing that's impressive again with Bielefeld is this run. They've knocked out a number of good teams now, so they seem to be for real.
What makes it feel such an enormous shock is not that it's a third-tier side beating one of the best teams in the Bundesliga. It's that Leverkusen have had so few embarrassments or real genuine disappointments since Xabi Alonso took over. The reaction to it in Germany has been huge. Like, for the first time, people are looking at Xabi Alonso and thinking, blimey, you really dropped the ball here. Which is amazing, really. I mean, I think he would openly admit this. He's been the subject of very little criticism or challenge since he's arrived. But the fact that they took the lead, went 2-1 down, and then didn't see the need to change anything tactically. I mean, it puts into perspective a little bit more maybe what happened in the February meeting in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich, where they went in without proper, in inverted commas, out-and-out striker, with both Schick and Boniface on the bench in a game that they needed to win, in a game that they thoroughly dominated. And they brought Schick on in the 92nd minute, and that was it. And because they played so well and so convincingly in that, and because they didn't lose, I suppose, the fact that they'd seemed to miss a golden chance to close the gap at the top was not really criticised. He got a bit of criticism for his tactics in the Champions League game against Bayern, especially in the first leg, and rightly so. But this is the first time that people are looking at Xabi Alonso and saying, "Come on, this is something. This is a game and a trophy that you definitely should have won, and you found a way not to do it." So I still think, as I said last week, and Ryan was, we were talking about it, was there, and obviously we were talking about it last week, there's still maybe a little bit more in the title race, especially with the injuries that Bayern have, and especially with the Champions League games that they have coming up. It feels like Leverkusen need to push Bayern. They need a strong end to the season now, because the disappointment and embarrassment is palpable.
But is there a case to be made that having these negative experiences is actually a little bit beneficial to Xabi Alonso, or at least that it's beneficial?
Yeah.
It's a case in point as to why it was a good idea for him to stay at Leverkusen for one more year, because we forget that he's only been a manager for like 5 minutes, and I think you do learn from having setbacks like that. And maybe better to have those setbacks at Leverkusen, where he's got infinite amounts of credit in the bank, than maybe going to Liverpool, maybe going to Real Madrid, when you're still developing as a coach, no?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Absolutely.
This question from Santi on Instagram. How concerning is it that despite coming back to win, PSG were 2-0 down to Ligue 2 club Dunkirk, Andy?
It was nearly a great story. And PSG have had more trouble in the Coupe de France in the last couple of rounds than they have off most of the big clubs that they've played this season, which is remarkable, really. Dunkirk gave them as much trouble as Liverpool did in the Champions League. As we said, 2-0 up, as you said, 2-0 up, even if it was against the run of play. But of course, the way that they managed to extricate themselves from it is A, expected, but B, quite impressive. Dunkirk were still in it, going late into the game, and at 3-2, Yacine Bamou, who used to work in the club shop at the Parc des Princes, missed a great chance to make it 3-3, which, I mean, he's scored against PSG before when he was playing for Nantes, but it would have been a brilliant story in a Coupe de France semi-final. Didn't manage to take it. And I think the impressive thing about PSG, for all the dazzle of their football in recent months, is when they've ended up in a little bit of a hole, whether that be the loss in the first leg against Liverpool in the Champions League last 16, whether that be going 2-0 down to a not that good Manchester City in the penultimate group game at the Parc des Princes, they don't panic, which I think is really, really important. And now I think it's even a plus, this, really, because it's shown they don't panic in a completely different context. Because bear in mind, as you say, Dunkirk, the Ligue 2, they have... We always say clubs that play PSG in France have a fraction of their resources. Well, they have a fraction of those resources. And actually, Demba Ba, who's the sporting director there, is making a real name for himself. He's performed miracles, really, to get them up in the playoff picture. But I think if we're looking at it from a PSG perspective, to go into a completely different context that they're used to, have that sort of experience where they're like, wow, we're not used to this at all, and be able to deal with it, I actually think is quite impressive.
So would you say, Andy, that for Dunkirk this was a hard-fought defeat that felt a bit like a victory?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. I'm moving swiftly.
The funny
on.
thing is, I could tell, I think from Dotun's smile on the feed here, you knew I was going to make that joke.
Well,
I have a feeling that you just kind of knew this is exactly the thing that's coming.
I've been waiting for that joke since 1944, so thank you.
Oh, gosh. See, you guys there, you're just like Arjen Robben. I knew what was coming, but I couldn't stop it, and I enjoyed watching it.
It's also like being tied to the tracks when the train is coming, but you went with Arjen Robben, and it's
yeah, exactly.
It's a nicer metaphor, I guess.
Better, I think, yeah.
A recurring theme on Ask OTC, we revisit now. From this question from Marie on Discord, what does La Liga's latest decision on Barcelona's finances mean for the futures of Dani Olmo and Pau Victor? Significantly.
So, but basically, the latest from La Liga is they have not counted the 100 million in towards Barcelona's budget that they've made from the selling of future VIP boxes at the soon-to-open new Camp Nou. Now, I don't want to say predictable, but it really is predictable. Now, La Liga say they are going with Barcelona's own accounts. So they've talked about the receipt of the money, but the receipt of the money is not in their accounts. So therefore, they're going to have to bring down their wage cap, their budget from there, because everyone in La Liga's budget and therefore wage cap is set by the accounts and their incomings and what they're actually able to support as they present it to La Liga. Now, of course, La Liga already refused the inscription of Dani Olmo and Pau Victor, and it was a separate court that a court of appeal outside La Liga's jurisdiction that allowed them to temporarily get Dani Olmo and Pau Victor on board. So this is a bit of a problem for Barcelona, because it could work out that Dani Olmo and Pau Victor are not eligible to compete in the closing weeks of the season. Now, this isn't something that will necessarily put the skids under Barcelona's title bid. Pau Victor is not a key player. Dani Olmo is fit sometimes on the evidence of this season, and we know that Barcelona have an excellent team without him. They've been playing so well. They've been playing such great football. 21 games unbeaten after that Copa del Rey semi-final win against Atletico Madrid. But in terms of what's happening going forward, now, we already heard earlier in the week through a number of reports that Barcelona have stopped their plan for next season because they just don't know how much money's in the pot. So they're not able to plan in terms of transfers, etc., Deco and company for 25-26. So all I would say is enjoy this Barcelona team while you can. Because goodness knows if they can actually hold it together. What we have to say is sometimes what's happening on the pitch and what's happening upstairs are two totally different things. And this is one of those cases. Hansi Flick has done so well and maybe with his experience from Bayern and the circus that sometimes is upstairs, he's been very good at insulating the players from all the nonsense and just creating this utopian football on the pitch, which is almost exactly the same thing that he did at Bayern. Even if Bayern aren't as erratically run as Barcelona, there's a lot of outside noise, and Flick is very, very good at blocking that out.
I suspect, because Barcelona are one of those clubs that tend to hire coaches who have experience either from the Barcelona or from working in a very similar style. They're slightly embedded in the culture. I suspect it's a huge advantage for Hansi Flick that he's not from there, that he's never played for the club, that he doesn't know any of the people who are commenting on what's going on, that he doesn't know anyone on the board. He can just look at all this stuff and go, well, this is mad, but I'm just going to coach the team. None of this is my problem. As long as I get paid more or less on time, I'm just going to coach the team, and none of this is anything to do with me, which is not how like Xavi probably would have felt about the situation if he was there. And just to be clear, Andy, Barcelona have sold off, I'm just reading this, they've sold off rights to use a bunch of VIP boxes for the next 20 years to fill a gap that's in the budget this year. That sounds like a really smart thing to do. Like, what on earth are they doing?
Definitely won't bite them on the arse in the future.
Please, nobody tell the Barcelona board about like Klarna and Wonga and these sort of companies. I mean, it's going to go completely wrong for them if they find out that payday loans are a thing.
Talking about being bitten on the arse, Caleb asked a question on Instagram for you, Lars.
Yeah.
Can you explain, please, the story behind Brynn goalkeeper Jan de Boer being given 4 trays of eggs as his Man of the Match award?
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't you want 4 trays of eggs? He's a professional sportsman. He probably eats a lot of eggs. Actually, that is one of my concerns about this. Would you be able to eat 4 trays of eggs before they all expire? Because eggs do expire. So that, I mean, maybe you have to. But no, on a serious note, there is a story behind this, which is, as people who have read my book will know, Bryne is my hometown club, Erling Haaland's hometown club, is from an agricultural part of Norway. It's from one of the most sort of best parts of the country in which to grow stuff. So there are a lot of farms, and they are kind of in Norway, as in every other country, as farmer is kind of seen as like a kind of derogatory thing. You know, like you're a bunch of farmers, this and that. And this season, Bryne are back in the top flight for the first time in over 20 years. And they've decided that they're really going to own this farmer thing. This is who we are. We're not going to hide from this. We're going to lean into it. So before the season started, they've done photo shoots with like the players in a barn and like the players out in the fields and stuff to just really like, you can try to denigrate us by saying we're farmers. Farmers are good. We need food. Sure. There's even for a long time, there's been a chant among the Bryne fans, which kind of goes, I'm not going to sing, but we're the farmers from Jæren. Do you want to buy a potato? Like they're really sort of leaning in. There is a potato festival in Bryne, actually. You should really go. The potato festival is really good. No, so yeah, given 4 trays of eggs is. I mean, I'm sure the plan and the hope was that this would go a little bit viral, as it has done, because they're not stupid. But there is also a very real sort of branding thing about like, this is who we are, so we're going to own that and we're going to lean into it. I hear rumors that next home game, the Man of the Match award will be 10 litres of milk, which is another one, which is also great, but I also don't know how you drink all that before it goes off. So, interesting.
With that in mind, what is a better Man of the Match award, Lars? Is it these 4 trays of eggs, or is it Alexander Sorlot's fish that he got at Real Sociedad?
I mean, I would prefer the fish, being honest, but that is also like the seafood in the Basque Country, of course, is amazing. So yeah, the San Sebastian fish, very rich. But I love this. This is great. We should. I mean, clubs, wherever you're from, whatever the culture of the place you're from, you should really lean into that. I think that's wonderful. Yeah,
talking of food, it's now time for Game of the Week. Do you see what I did there, folks?
Yeah.
Brought to you by FotMob, but crucially, with a food pairing to go with it. Each week, our experts recommend a game for you to watch at the weekend, and just as importantly, they recommend what you should eat whilst you're watching it. Where are you going this week for your Game of the Week, Andy?
La France, because Lyon are playing Lille on Saturday night. Absolutely huge game in terms of the Champions League places. Lyon currently in 7th, Lille in 5th, but it's very, very close. There's only 5 points between 2nd and 7th at the moment, which is exactly why PSG are going to win the title this weekend officially. But this is huge. Lille got a win in the derby last weekend against Lens, which took them back above Lyon. Lyon so really need to win this because they've been on a pretty decent run. But they lost 4-2 at Strasbourg, who also went above them. They're one of the other teams in the mix last Friday night. It was a weird one because they actually played pretty well in that. In the first half, in particular, without scoring, before a bit of the international break. Of course, a couple of their players went off to South America, Talifico and Almada, and they were sort of picked off by Liam Rosinia's side in the second half. So they really need that win.
So what are we going to eat with it then, Andy?
Well, you know what? There is simply no time to relax because it's so busy at the top. So I think we're going to have to go for the Lyon match day tradition of a burger, actually, because you have an artisan burger and beer chain called Ninkasi. Other beers and burgers are available, obviously, which has been part of the Lyon matchday experience for a long time. They used to have a microbrewery opposite the stadium at Gerland, the old stadium. It was one of the things that was taken away from the matchday experience when they moved to Dessine, to this incredible new stadium. They've finally built a branch by the stadium, so you can burger until your heart's content.
With fromage?
Not for me, but for you. I'll shout your cheese.
I'll have yours as well. I'll have a slice of yours.
Okay.
Thank you. Lars, what are you going for as your game of the week?
I'm heading to Italy, Dotun, where Roma take on Juventus on Sunday, because Roma are an interesting case right now. The turnaround of their season is absolutely unbelievable. So I did some research here. I looked this up. I believe I'm right in saying that in the first 14 league games, they won only 3. But in the last 14, they haven't lost. They've won 11 of the last 14 in the league, drawing the last 3. It's just an unbelievable turnaround for Roma under none other than Claudio Ranieri. And it's extraordinary. I don't think anyone thought that good old Claudio, at the age of, 73 or something, would turn this around in the way he has done. And he has been asked about it, and he says that actually, when I arrived, I found a strong squad that had lost some of its self-belief. So I just tried to get them united, to give them that confidence, to just kind of give them a lift. So all they needed was Claudio to make them feel better about themselves. Now, I have checked the XG table on FotMob, as listeners will know I'm very fond of, and they are overperforming their XG a tiny bit. So maybe there's an element of maybe some good finishing, good fortune going their way, but you can't deny a remarkable turnaround from them. They come up against Juventus, who of course recently fired Thiago Motta. Igor Tudor is back in, which true fans of OTC will remember fondly Igor Tudor's stint at Marseille, which was very strange, where many odd things happened. That was the time when the players of Marseille actually formed a delegation and went, I believe, to the president and asked if we could have a chat about the manager's method before his first ever league game. It was like the 1st of August or something. The story broke that they already hate this guy. So the team got better. Obviously, it wasn't a total disaster, but it was tempestuous. He is the guy who's getting brought in to steady the ship and try to eke something out of this season for Juventus. I think this might not be the best game ever, but it's really fascinating because they're both chasing the last Champions League spot. We don't know yet if that's 4th or 5th, but they're right in the reckoning there. Super important between two interesting teams. Gotta watch this.
Before you tell us what to eat with it, I've got a bone to pick with you that's been gnawing at me for just a moment or two. Were you suggesting that 73 is an age?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, I spent most of February playing golf with my father in Southeast Asia, and he's 76 now, and he hits the golf ball longer than me, so I'm in no position to be ageist about these things.
Good. Yeah, you can't teach your granddad to suck eggs, so to speak. Talking of which, what should we eat? Eggs?
I mean, you should go to Brine. He has many eggs left over. So if there's ever going to be a place where you're going to be teaching someone, whether he is a senior citizen or not, to suck eggs, the eggs there are there. Jan de Boer is ready to go. I've got all these eggs. I don't know what to do with them, man.
For those of us who can't make it to Brine for the weekend, what should we eat whilst we watch Roma versus Juventus?
Also just occurs to me, if it's true that the next man of the match award is 10 litres of milk, Jan de Boer should really try to get that, and he could just make the most pancakes anyone has ever made with the 4 trays of eggs. With my Italian game, I'm going to keep it very simple. I think last time I also picked an Italian game and I talked about making risotto or something. I think that's the thing that happened, or maybe I dreamt it. But I've recently, my local Italian place does an incredibly good sort of truffle and mushroom pizza. It's simple, but it's absolutely incredible. And since the game is on the Sunday, you want something not too complicated. I've discovered truffles late in life. It's very, very good.
So much for I'll go for something simple.
It's a pizza. Come on.
Not the truffles bit. It's not simple, mate. You've got to find them first. You hire professional pigs.
I was planning on having someone else do that, Dotun, but